The Georgian era is named after its kings because 4 out of the 5 kings of the period are called George. So I suppose for this video, when we're talking about important people of the Georgian era, we better start with those kings.
Just for some context, this era started in 1714 and ended in 1837. Lots of things happened in this time, but if you want to know more about that, check out some of our other videos. This one is just for the people.
George I came to the throne after Queen Anne died. She died without an heir, so she decided to pass the throne over to her German cousins, the Hanoverians. So that's another name for the 4 Georgian kings. Their last name was Hanoverian, so that's their dynasty's name. He came to rule the country without even knowing how to speak the language, and he spent a lot of his time on the throne fighting a rebellion by the Jacobites.
George II came to the throne in 1727 until 1760. He was the last king to fight alongside his soldiers on the battlefield at the Battle of Dettingen in 1743. During his reign, Bonnie Prince Charlie landed in Scotland and the Industrial Revolution started. George II was known for being very angry and having lots of mistresses.
George III you probably know as the king that went a little bit mad. Depending on who you ask, he was either brilliant or awful. He's actually our 3rd longest reigning monarch after Queen Victoria and Queen Elizabeth II. The first 7 years of his reign were spent fighting a war against France, and then he faced the American Revolution and then the Napoleonic Wars. Chaos.
George IV is known as the Regent King because he filled in for his father when he was ill. He was known for his extravagances and liked art. He built lots of new buildings, including the Royal Pavilion in Brighton. He actually denied his wife Caroline entry to his coronation, and she died of shock. He only ruled as a proper king for 10 years, despite filling in for his father since 1811.
William IV had the shortest reign, reigning from 1830 to 1837. He was the younger brother of King George IV, and when he died, he had no children, so he passed the throne to his younger brother's daughter, Alexandrina, who would later become Queen Victoria.
Queen Charlotte was the wife of George III, and she was the longest-serving British Queen Consort. Queen Charlotte had 15 children with George. They got married in 1761, and she died in 1818, so they were married for 57 years.
Charles Edward Stuart, or Bonnie Prince Charlie, was the young pretender who led that Jacobite rebellion I mentioned earlier. He was the grandson of James II, who'd been kicked off the throne in 1689 by William and Mary when they became our rulers. So, as one of the descendants of a previous king, he thought he should rule and not these German Hanoverians, and that's why he rebelled.
William and Caroline Herschel were pioneering astronomers who discovered Uranus and 8 comets. William was one of the first professional astronomers and discovered infrared radiation, and his sister Caroline helped develop the mathematical approach to astronomy.
Thomas Coram was a shipbuilder but then a philanthropist who founded the Foundling Hospital in 1739 that was a place where children could go if their mothers couldn't look after them.
William Wilberforce was a leading figure in the abolitionist movement to end slavery, and in 1807 the Slavery Act was passed, but it took until 1833 to end slavery completely in Britain.
Mary Wollstonecraft was the mother of Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein, but also the mother of feminism, because she wrote about women's rights at a time when it was unheard of. You didn't talk about women's rights. She wrote novels, A History of the French Revolution, and her most important work was called A Vindication of the Rights of Women, that said that women only appear inferior to men because they don't have the same education.
Robert Burns was a Scottish poet who changed the literature world in terms of his poetry and the Romantic movement. He's a bit like our version of William Shakespeare if you want to grasp how famous he is. He's a national hero in Scotland. And you know that song that we sometimes sing at New Year's, or as they call it in Scotland, Hogmanay? Well, he wrote it. For the sake of Auld Lang Syne. You know the one. He's interesting because he wrote his poems as if you would speak them. And on the 25th of January every year, Burns Night is celebrated, which was actually his birthday, and people get together and recite his poems and celebrate, and they also do an ode to a haggis, which is one of his famous poems, and then they eat the haggis.
George Washington led the American Revolutionary War, was one of the founding fathers and the first president. The other founding fathers, I'm going to read from my list. John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison.
Arthur Wellesley was the first Duke of Wellington, and he defeated Napoleon on the battlefield at Waterloo. He was a great military commander and oversaw many victories. He also became Prime Minister twice and was the Commander-in-Chief of the British military.
Lord George Gordon Byron, or more famously just known as Lord Byron, was similar to Robert Burns in that he was a famous writer during the Romantic movement of literature, which came in the Georgian era. He was famous for his poetry and is said to have had a pet bear while he was at Oxford because they said he couldn't have a pet dog.
Jane Austen is one of the most famous authors ever. She wrote at a time when women weren't really writing, and she gives us a great insight into how life was during the Regency period.
Captain James Cook circumnavigated the globe, which means he sailed around it twice, which was a huge achievement for his time.
Lord Admiral Horatio Nelson is known for his time in the Napoleonic Wars, similar to the Duke of Wellington who we mentioned earlier. He was a great military leader with unconventional tactics, and he's best known for his victory at the Battle of Trafalgar, where the British Navy defeated the French and Spanish, and he also died there.
Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe.